Here we go. Okay. So really welcome everyone. When Lisa and I have known each other for, I don't know how long, a few years, something like that.
Yeah.
And we just instantly realized how much our thinking aligned. And I was talking to her about, oh, can't you do a workshop for us? And when she came up with this topic and this title, Authenticity in the Art of Relationship Building, I thought, there is nothing more aligned than that title to what I believe. So it was like, please, and so we were working on scheduling. So I'm very happy to have her here today. So I'm going to do a brief intro and then leave it up to Lisa to move forward. So Lisa Richer is a certified neurodiversity consultant who believes that we must first seek to understand a person in order to effectively support them in all learning and development needs. She's a really sought after podcast guest speaker on neurodiversity and inclusion. She's the parent of two neurodivergent teenage boys, has more than 25 years of combined leadership, human resources, training, neurodiversity consulting experience, and for years as year and years as an elite level athlete, Lisa leverages her lived experiences and professional training in her consultancy journey to bloom. I'm also going to ask everyone to please mute themselves. And then if you want to speak up or have a question, just use the raise hand gesture, please, and we'll call on you so we don't have any background noise. Lisa, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? All right,
Yes.
good. See some thumbs up. All right, so you'll see me moving back and forth because I moved the visual over to the right. As Jonathan said, we've known each other for a while now, and we've always had like a connection from the moment we talked through messaging, and then in a video call, I just knew that he was going to be someone that I would want to be in collaboration with. And so it took us a while to get here, but we are here today. A little bit more about me as we get started here is I truly believe that authenticity stems from the relationships within ourselves. And as we walk through things today, this is going to be very interactive. I think about things from the middle out, which made it very difficult over the years in corporate environments that like to think about things very linear. So for example, when I was putting this deck together, I started in the middle. I didn't start with an agenda. I started with piecing together things that I felt may be impactful based on who I know Jonathan is and the people that he attracts into the Collaberex community. And from there, I backed into the slides. And then from there, we came up with the agenda. And so very different than that linear thinking that never served me well in corporate. I was fought against a lot. But over time, as I leaned into who I am, became comfortably uncomfortable with the person that I am. And I'm going to share something very quickly. I have this app called I Am. And this morning, very timely, this statement came up. I am allowed to be imperfect and confident at the same time. I'm going to say it one more time. I am allowed to be imperfect and confident at the same time. Curious to know if that resonates for anyone else. You can come on and say yes, or just raise your hand or put something in the chat.
No, I'll comment so much so. As I've said to you, Lisa, we all are human. You know, we have these singular, imperfect human lives, and the question is, what are we going to do about it? You know, so we can be confident and figure out what dent we want to make.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else want to share before we move on?
I just think it's yeah, important. Honestly, like I'm gonna actually just be very personal and say, like even with like my wife, I've had some issues here and there where you know, I don't do things, or like I mess up, you know, then I'm like confident that like I'll do it better, and then she's like, but you messed up like repeatedly. And I'm like, I'm confident it'll be better. But you know, she gets, you know, worrisome, you know, because I'm like confident about it, but at the same time I think that's important. So
Yeah, I mean, failure is growth. So fail forward, fail fast, and just trust that every step you're taking is a lesson learned. And it sounds like, Evan, that's the way that you're embracing it. So I celebrate you for that.
thank you.
Anyone else want to share before I move on? All right, there'll be plenty of time to share. Jonathan, is there anything in the chat? I saw some things come through in the chat. Is there anything in the chat worth mentioning before I dive in?
David put in, I no longer worry much about what people think about me in any superficial ways. And that's,
Yay. That gave me chills. I'm a very intuitive person. I really have learned to trust how I feel. And before everyone came on, Jonathan and I were just talking about that Jonathan had said we attract those that are attracted to us. So being confident with those imperfections, which came out of me sharing that quote with him, what I wrote down from that was not being afraid to be yourself. And all that matters is inward acceptance, not outward acceptance. And when we learn to accept ourselves for who we are, then those that can appreciate us and respect us, even if they don't understand us, so those that can appreciate us and accept us, even if they don't understand us, will be the ones that we get to work with, around, for, be of service to, and all those great things that allow us to just authentically be who we are meant to be. So I'm going to move on. This I took is actually the visual that Jonathan pushed out when we were talking about putting this together and what the workshop is going to explore. So I left that up for a few minutes just so people could take a look at it on what we'll explore. Not going to read it verbatim. We're going to unpack this throughout this next hour. If I can get to the next slide, hang on, let's try this again. There we go. All right. So a little bit about me and my approach. I lead from the heart. I communicate with compassion. I envision with non-judgment, and I engage with empathy. All things that I have learned truly serve me in the role that I play as the founder of Journey to Bloom, as a neurodiversity consultant that focuses in 3 areas, with parents, helping them help their kids navigate the neurodiverse learning journey, with individuals such as yourself, whether it's for yourself and how to feel that you can become your best self and then show up that way, and with organizations where I'm helping others understand different neurotypes, understanding how to lead and engage across those neurotypes, and what happens when you don't take the time to appreciate and respect someone, even if you don't understand it. So that's also a little bit about the approach and how we'll talk about things here today. All right, so this is pause point number 1. Whether you want to put it in the chat or you want to write it down, I would encourage you, if you're at a space where you have a piece of paper and a pen, you can put pen to paper. Something I've learned through working with my therapist is that when you type something, it works with one part of your brain, but when you write it, it works with a different part of your brain. And the part that you write with actually can help shift you from like trauma mode into a more relaxed state. That's what my therapist tells me. I'm not a therapist, so like I'm not, don't quote me on it. This is what I'm being told, whether it's true or not. I've started to believe it and I see those shifts happening. So sometimes what you believe is what changes, right? So answering these 3 questions, I'd like you all to take a moment to do this. 1 is what stops you from trusting yourself. 2 is what allows you to trust yourself. And then 3 is what may help you consistently trust yourself. And I'm actually going to give everyone a minute to think about this and answer it. Okay. For some, that minute might have felt like a lifetime. We're going to go into the pause and what the pause has helped me do over time as well, especially being a neurodivergent individual that's combined ADHD. And if I don't write it down or I don't share it, then I lose the thought. And so it's not about me interrupting. It's about me wanting to share something that I feel is valid, but learning how to do it in an appropriate way, not because society says so, but because I feel good about myself when I do give myself that pause. So we'll talk about it. And for me, what stops me from trusting myself is when I have those impulsive moments. And I wouldn't really necessarily call them impulsive. They're more like I have these thoughts and I have to get them out. But what allows me to trust myself is when I then take that pause and I give myself permission to process whatever it is that's being asked of me, so that I can then inform others or share my thoughts in a concise and clear manner, instead of in like a non sequitur, because my thoughts are going all over the place. So what helps me stay consistently and trusting myself is leveraging those tools and resources that I know allow me to show up as my most authentic self and my true self. Because even if it's uncomfortable to somebody else to sit in that pause, eventually it allows them to also take the time necessary to not react and instead to respond. So who would like to share one or all of their answers here? And I see a lot of stuff in the chat, Jonathan. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. So let me call on a few people. Carol, could you
I knew you were
tell us
going to.
about, well, because I thought it was so thoughtful, so therefore.
So I've definitely made mistakes in the past in trusting the wrong people, taking on the wrong business partners, marrying the wrong people. And so that's caused me to not trust my own judgment when I've made such radical mistakes. But I've also learned that the reason I've made those radical mistakes is because I didn't listen to my own gut instinct. Like literally the night before my wedding, I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this. Should have listened to myself. And the thing that allows me to continue or to trust myself is when I can reflect back on the lessons that I've learned since then, and even like how I've been able to apply that in some certain situations. And what I've also learned is that to do consistently, I'm very much a type A doer. And so I have to make a conscious effort to slow down, to reflect, to journal things out. Like whenever I'm stuck with a decision and I'm not trusting myself, the first thing I do, to your point, Lisa, is I pick up a pen and paper, because it does help us form connections in our brain so that I can start to kind of reflect on that. And what it really does, I find, is it clears out the clutter of what's swirling in my brain and all of those things, to really then be able to hear and listen to where my own gut instinct is telling me and understand the why behind it.
Wow. So intuition, gut, I felt that everywhere. And what I will say is celebrating you for recognizing all of this. You're clearly self-aware, and you're learning through those mistakes that are lessons, and we act and react how we're feeling inside at whatever point in time that we are. And I am also that A-type personality that's like go, go, go. And as an elite level athlete, it was always like raise the bar, raise the bar, raise the bar, raise the bar. And yet at the same time, after I had gone into burnout and I started working with a therapist, what I really fully recognized, because I was getting glimpses of it in the years leading up, is that stretching and doing one trick at a time. I was a gymnast, and then doing a partial routine and then a full routine. Like, you don't get to the elite level that I was at the Olympic level. You don't get there without those mini micro steps and falling and getting up and getting coached and getting that feedback and reflecting and all those things. And you have a team of people, your therapist, your PT or coaches, like you have this team around you, and we lose sight of these things as we get older, that we have to do it all on our own. And we can't make mistakes, because that's what society has led us to believe. And that we have to just keep going. Like even a 24-hour rule. I tell clients sometimes that I will get back to you within a week. If it's urgent, you need to let me know. If it's really urgent, text me, call me. Like there's all these different ways to get in touch with me. But know that when I don't connect with you, it's not intentional. It's that I either needed space or I needed to slow down. And now today, running my own business, I work about half as many hours as I did when I was working as a corporate leader. And I am way more successful. I have made way more impact, and I have a lot more energy, and I am so much happier. So that phrase, less is more, and timing is everything. It is. And sometimes that timing needs to be that you need to slow down. And, you know, I bought mandala books, coloring books for my kids. And when I started using them, wow, I was able to just, my husband would go, "Are you working today?" Because I sometimes would spend 2 hours in the mandala book. That's what I needed. That's what my brain needed to get me back to a calm state where I wasn't in trauma mode, and I was able to truly be my best for the people that I was serving and being of service to. So having 3 great hours of conversation was so much better than 8 hours of half of me. So I celebrate you for the shifts you've made. And thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Carol. So I want to just ask Dorinda, what you wrote in the chat, I think probably applies to almost all of us here. So it's so relevant. So that's what stops you, but how do you get past that?
What did she say, Jonathan? That
She
stopped
says,
her?
what stops me is striving for perfectionism, must do it right. Dorinda, are you there?
Oh, I am. I didn't know you wanted me to talk. I thought you were just going to read it. I'm sorry.
Oh, I did, but you know, you
Yeah.
can explain it much better
Yeah.
than me talking about it. So.
Yeah. So historically, that has been a huge thing for me. I must always do things perfectly. So I do market research for work. And for me, it's so hard to say, okay, this is done. Like, I just want to make sure it's perfect. And it's taken me a long time to accept the fact that I'm not perfect. I know no humans are perfect, but I thought I was perfect, or I wanted to be perfect. So then what allows you to trust yourself is I'm very conscious of each situation. So some situations, striving for perfection makes sense. In others, it totally doesn't, because the outcome really isn't going to matter in the long run.
Excuse me, do you mind if I interject here, John?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so you just talked about, you hit on something that's has a lot that touches my heart, I'll say. People talk about, when is it done, right? And so for a lot of us, and in a lot of what I do is I make the contacts and people that I work with and mentor and coach. You define a definition of done, right? You say, when is it done? X, Y, and Z criteria. And then once you've met those criteria, you stop. And one of the biggest things that is hard to this is that we keep starting. And my favorite saying is, stop starting and start finishing, if that makes any sense.
Mm. I like that.
Thanks,
I want to add in here a little bit. So Dwayne had mentioned, when you meet the criteria, stop. I'm going to go 2 levels deeper. Stop, celebrate, and then reflect on how it felt to celebrate when you stopped, so that you can keep moving forward. And that somewhat goes to the difference between perfection and mastery. Because when you have an end in mind and you've gotten to that place where you've accomplished that goal, you may have mastered that particular thing, and then you strive again. There is no such thing as perfection, but there is such a thing as mastery. And oftentimes you're mastering sets of skills. You may not master everything. I mean, I'll use Simone Biles as an example. She fell on beam right at the second day of Olympic trials. Nobody is perfect, not even the most incredible gymnast of all time. Not perfect. Nobody is perfect. So when you think about being able to master something, but knowing that mastery, there's also mistakes, and that's okay, that also helps to let go of that self-judgment of needing to always be perfect.
Yeah. Did everyone hear the and I'll let you go on after this one comment, the Roger Federer speech at Dartmouth graduation? And he talked about he's one of the greatest tennis players of all time. And I think he said that he won 52 or 53% of the points that he played. So he lost 47%. There's no perfection, even for the greatest athletes or the people that are most accomplished. So it's being aware of that.
Yeah. Baseball's another great example of that. Nobody bats 1,000.
Yes.
If you're batting over 300, you're doing great. So you're missing more than you're hitting. And it's
Yep.
still considered mastery, perhaps, depending on who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to move on and then we'll keep going. I just want to make sure that I share, and then we can always come back into some things, and we can always revisit some of these slides if we need to. So this slide, it says true self. I thought about not sharing this, and then I decided, well, this is what sits on my wall that I did on a big piece of like a white sticky pad. And I wanted to unpack this for all of you because I thought perhaps it could help you get to your true self and your authentic self and really help you. So I put this together in this visual, which I said to Jonathan, I'm grateful that we're doing what we're doing today, because otherwise I may not have ever put it in this visual. And I think it's a good one just for me to look back on. So courage was my word of 2023. Courage became my word of 2024. Now, 3 years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, I can't pick the same word again. I'm supposed to pick a new word. Every word I need a word, but it can't be the same word. Yeah, the stories I'm telling myself. It couldn't be the same word because somebody in society told me it shouldn't be the same word. But why not? Why can't it be the same word? What if I want to go deeper and broader within that word and it resonates with me and it hits me deep in my soul and intuitively it's telling me this is my word again? So I chose the word. Clearly, you can see it's still here. What I decided to do this year, and it was in collaboration with my therapist, who also has become my business thought partner in some ways, and my life thought partner in some ways, and in all my different selves, my younger self, my current self, my future self. And I broke it down into these areas that are really, really important to me. And so I'm going to walk through them with you. And then I'm curious to know what comes up for you all and what questions you have about this. So on the left side, you'll see capacity. And for me, capacity is, do I say no? Do I say not now? And do I say not yet? And this is referring to capacity in my personal life, capacity in my professional life, and just capacity as an individual, as a human being. Then there's the authentic self. And for me to truly be my true self, I need to continue to trust my lived experience. I need to trust the community in which I choose to be a part of, those that I choose to let into my sphere. And very importantly, I need to choose to continue to trust my intuition and not those around me. And then the third part of this is collaboration. Everything I do is in collaboration with. And through that, I need to continue to allow myself to show up with curiosity so that it brings clarity, so that I can make an intentional decision on whether or not I want to form a connection, continue a connection, or let go of a connection with a person or organization or otherwise that I'm in collaboration with. These are my guiding points. This is, maybe next year I'll go even deeper with the courage, but this is what I believe is what I need to continue to look at, to ground myself, to continue to do what I do and live my life's purpose. All right, I'm going to pause. And you guys can come off or put it in chat. Jonathan can share from there thoughts that you might have and questions.
Or if you want to make a comment, you can raise your hand. And
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Lisa, I hate to mention something that, you know, you and I, well, that you had mentioned. So in capacity,
Yeah,
under
go ahead.
capacity, you know, you're defining it negatively. It's like, okay, do I say no to this? Do I say not now or not yet?
Yeah.
And everything left over is, I guess, how you're going to fill your whatever bandwidth you want to fill.
Yeah. So
Instead of it's why are you looking at it from a negative point of view instead of a
Yeah.
positive, like this is what I want to do and everything else I'm going to throw out.
Yeah. So that hit me, and we just talked about this, but as you were just describing it that way, it hit me differently. So when you say it that way, it does sound icky and bad, but I'm going to flip the script on you and everyone else here, because to me, no, not yet, not now, or not negatives. Saying yes to everything is what led me to burnout. Being a people pleaser, feeling like I could be a fixer for everything, living in survival mode, all of those things. And growing up that way, as I was the fixer, I was the yes ma'am, I was the people pleaser. I don't have a problem saying yes. I have a problem saying no. And so no, not now, and not yet are actually empowering words to me. They're not negative at all. When I say no to something that doesn't feel right to me, I'm standing in my power, I'm standing in my truth, and I am being true to myself. So you saw it as a negative, whereas I see those three as extreme positives.
Yeah. Jill, do you want to say about what you just put in the chat?
Okay, while Lisa was talking, I think I kind of worked out what the answer is. But because of my background and possibly yours as well, Jonathan, it feels a bit wonky for me to see collaboration over on one side and courage at the top. Because I wonder whether if you swap them over and collaboration was at the top, that would enable you to have capacity for whatever you chose to have. It would give you a space where you can be your authentic, where you should be your authentic self in a collaboration, and having a community around you will support you and increase your capacity. In a collaboration, you have to use your intuition and it becomes your lived experience. The courage, on the other hand, if it was on that right-hand side, you need courage to be curious and have that clarity and that deep connection for yourself, who you are, and that connection that you have with other people as well. It's very hard sometimes to connect deeply with another person. You have to have a little bit of courage in there because they're an unknown quantity to a certain extent. So I just wondered why courage was your word as opposed to maybe one of the other ones along the way.
Yeah, no, and that I feel you deeply throughout my entire being. And my old self would have been on defense. My old self would have been like, why are you questioning me? My current self, which is my true authentic self, is going to say that would work for you. And I do a lot of work in collaboration. I've done transformation, leadership, mindfulness work for many, many years. And everybody is a person of one. What works for you and how you process and perceive information is different than how I process and perceive information. And so I love that you brought this up, because for me, as I thought about what you said, if I took collaboration and put it up top and that became my word. Now, remember at the beginning of this part of the conversation, I said courage was my word of the year for 2023 and 2024. So courage is my guiding light. If I drop courage over to the right and put collaboration at the top, then I'm missing my guiding light. When I'm not courageous, nothing else falls into place. So for me, in order to be able to say yes or no to what I want to do, in order for me to be my authentic self, and in order for me to collaborate, I first need to have courage. So for me, courage will always be, and I'm so glad you shared what you did with me, because it felt off to me as you were talking about what was changing, what you would change. And that's good. So I want you guys to understand, I appreciate that perspective and I respect it, but it doesn't work for me. And so when I work with my clients, and I'll say to them, just because I don't understand it doesn't mean I don't respect it or appreciate it. And that goes back full circle, right, to what I said earlier. what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. This is my North Star. This is my journey. You can change it and shift it however you want. Maybe some of these words don't even make sense to you. You may say yes, maybe, or no. Like, you can put whatever words work for you, but this is what makes me my true self.
Thanks. Al, did you have a comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. We
All right.
can.
I want to add on to what Lisa said about courage, and offer a different perspective at the same time. Rather than moving towards mastery or moving towards perfection, I personally choose to have the courage, and I'll expand on it, to move towards continuous growth. Now, we run into all kinds of life situations on a daily basis, and they really don't have any value until we define them. And some people choose to define a situation as a problem, which makes them a victim. And they struggle against being a victim. Other people will define the exact same situation as a challenge and really struggle and fight to win. Maybe they do, and maybe they don't. Then there's the third option, and that's to see, and this is where courage comes into play, to see every situation as an opportunity. Because really, when we see things as a problem or a challenge, we may or may not win. But when we look at things as an opportunity, no matter how bad they appear on the surface, it gives us the chance to take a look inside of ourselves and muster up the courage to find out how to deal with this situation effectively. And each time we do that, we exponentially, continuously grow. It may be intellectually, it may be spiritually, it may be physically. But again, every situation has three choices, but really only one, and that's opportunity. And that's where our personal growth comes from. And so that's my contribution.
Thank you so much, Al. Really, thank you. Lisa?
Thank you. Yeah, so I moved on to the next slide. Gosh, I think I could have just put that one slide up and talked about, we could have had the whole entire session on that slide. So maybe next time we can dive deeper into that. So, you know, we're talking about all of this today and the impact on relationships. So trusting yourself, sharing your truth, being authentic, and mindset. And so I want to just go back for a moment to what I think it was Gil, is that correct?
Jill.
What Gil was saying. When I wasn't in the right mindset, when my mindset wasn't, I'm going to be true to who I am, and I'm going to help to educate others on where I'm coming from, because I'm a very nonlinear thinker. I think from the inside out. I don't think like a lot of people, which has really put me on a defensive track. And what I didn't mean to be, it was just that I wasn't confident in who I am and how I see the world. But I am now. So that conversation that we just had and what Gil shared, you know, I do some similar work to what Jonathan does in different capacities as well, but that didn't bother me either, because we all have different perspectives. Being authentic. I was able to be authentic here because I'm around a community of people that may not understand me, but they're going to appreciate it, even if it's a different perspective. I shared my truth because I trust myself. And so I believe that many of us may end up talking further later. I love everything everybody says. I love having my thoughts and ideas challenged, because I'm so comfortable in how I think now and how those thoughts impact my body, my feelings, my actions and reactions, that they just help me become a better person and a better leader, a better guider, a better navigator. Without learning, I believe I'm not living. And so all of these thoughts and differing perspectives just make me better at what I do. And I now I encourage them and I ask for them. So I just want you all to think about these things too, is when you are fully trusting yourself, when you're able to share your truth, when you're being authentic, and when your mindset is at a place where you get to show up as you and attract the things that are meant to come to you and trust it. What shifts for you? You know, those are just things, you don't have to say anything here, but those are things to think about. And with that, and those impact on relationships, when you're listening to learn and you're listening to understand versus listening to react or listening to respond, what happens? All right, I'll pause because I just said a lot.
So, Lisa, I think that only when you're listening to learn will you learn something. Will you have to, sometimes you have to decide um like what it's weird. Like what brings you pleasure? Do you feel it pleasurable to learn something new, to change your opinion based on new information that you get? Like, oh, I learned something new. I used to think this and now I think this. And only when you listen to learn can you get that, are you open to receiving that data? Certain people are they feel pleasure in getting all the information and then deciding, and other people get more pleasure in being right versus getting it right.
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe being wrong, but thinking they're getting it right.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. We can keep talking about this, but I am going to move to the next slide because I think it's important to look at this. Oops. So understanding yourself leads to clarity, confidence, and the courage to live life authentically. That is a statement that I often say. And so I'm curious to know, what comes up for you when you hear that statement? Understanding yourself leads to clarity, confidence, and the courage to live life authentically. When you know who you are, what you do, how you share it, and why you do it. When you can answer those 4 statements, and purposely I have why last. In my mind, the way that my mind works, the way that I became who I am today, or unbecame everything that I was told to be so that I could become who I was always meant to be, the why is the last thing that I talk about. Who I am, what I do, how I share it is all way more important to me than why I do it.
I have a question for everyone. Do you think this comes naturally to you, or is it hard for you individually to understand yourself, which will lead to clarity, or to answer these questions? Who are you? What do you do?
How do you do it, or how do you share it? And then why do you do it?
Yeah, I've heard people say to figure out like where are you going and why are you going there?
Yeah. So I just saw in the chat, somebody said, and I'm smirking, and I mean this with all the respect in the world. Somebody said, cynic says start with the why. Yes, he does. And Brene Brown might say start with something else. And somebody else may say start with something else. You have to choose what feels right to you, what feels authentic to you, and go from there. My why is because it's my life's purpose. But I could never say it was my life's purpose until I defined who I am, what I do, and how I do it. So my statement is why I do it because it's my life's purpose. But I could never have gotten to the why without all these other layers. So with all the respect in the world, he is a phenomenal person and he does great things, but I would have been stuck at the starting line if I tried to start with my why. So for me, that just doesn't work.
David, do you want to talk about, you know, how things change in life as you?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to say, you know, who I am today is not who I was 10 years ago, is not who I was 20 years ago. It's naturally going to change, and it may change all the time. So I find it difficult to write down a definition as if it's static. I prefer to think of myself as dynamic, and situationally I can change and still be authentic, because the authenticity comes from what happened before and, you know, who you are innately.
I love what you just said. The one thing that sticks with me is, who are you innately? Who you are innately doesn't change. Who you are within is who you are. But who you are as you see yourself through those lived experiences can change over time. And I didn't say here, who are you finite? I just said who you are. But what you perceived from that was a stagnant statement. And that's not wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying that with, like, I'm celebrating your honesty here. And this all just brings back to life of, our perceptions are our reality. But what I wrote is different than how I interpreted it. Who I am might be who I am at any point in time. And that's when I trust in that, then I am allowed to continue to be my authentic self.
Yes, I so agree with that, Lisa. We perceive ourselves differently or define ourselves differently at different stages in our life. And sometimes when we get older, we Simon Sinek says, define your why even by looking back on your life and seeing what the consistency was that that put you in, a zone that was comfortable for you.
So then there you go. His defining of a why is much more similar than I thought. I'll be honest, I haven't listened to much of his stuff, but what you just described, Jonathan, and here, this was my perception. Knowing that he always said, define your why, but I never understood the why behind it, if you will. I just learned something. He has a very similar thought process, because going back there allowed me to define my why. So defining your why first sounds like it was go back through your life's journey to figure out your why. And that's what I did through all my lessons learned. And I know that the work I do now is my life's purpose. So thank you for that, because that's something I wasn't aware of.
Yeah. Dorinda, I love what you said in the chat also. If you could expand on the change just has to be true to you, not because of someone else. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to be true to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you are who you are. I mostly agree with that, but I have definitely evolved. The person that I am today, the person I was when I was 30 wouldn't recognize her.
So let me just go a little bit, try to get a little more clear on that. When I say the person that you are, I was, it's before society, before other people's perceptions of me, before me listening to situations, before me getting into circumstances. I always was, before those things changed me, a confident, self-aware, intuitive person. But through the years, I was told, be less passionate, be less emotional, become more monotone if you ever want to make it in a leadership role at the C-suite. So that's just one example. So I unbecame those core things that make me who I am. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't need to go through what I went through so I could grow into understanding how to leverage those things appropriately. but those things were always innately within me. And so that's where David was saying innately, like that's the piece of it that I'm talking about. Outwardly, and so many of my learned experiences, I couldn't do the work I do today if I hadn't had my children. Because if my children hadn't come out the way they did and they weren't neurodivergent the way that, and their diagnoses, I wouldn't have learned about really truly who I am. I wouldn't have learned about my visual processing disorder. I wouldn't have learned so many things, and I wouldn't have had the lived experiences I have. But today I get to use that intuition, that persistence, that resilience that has always been within me, that was taken away from me because people didn't understand me.
Yeah, there's this, and I'll let you talk about this next slide, but there's this discussion that we've had at Collaberex groups about weaknesses and strengths and how to turn your weaknesses into strengths. And it's, you don't change yourself. Those things that have been perceived as weaknesses, like what you just described, Lisa, don't talk enthusiastically. Don't change yourself, change your situation. Put yourself in places where though your innate characteristics are strengths.
I love that. Don't change yourself, change your situation. And that's what I did. I created my own destiny. And I'm where I am today now, doing what I do with people that I absolutely love being surrounded by, including all of you today. I'm loving this discussion because I chose to be true to myself. So when you look at this slide, authenticity often stems from the relationship we have within ourselves. Another thing that I've learned to say and repeat on mantra for myself. These 4 questions, this is where I want to spend the rest of the time here. And I let Jonathan know I can stay on for an extra 10, 15 minutes for anyone that wants to continue. My 13-year-old would say I would talk about this stuff 24/7 if I could, because I just literally, it's my life's purpose. It's so just, it drives me. I might have to take a nap after this, but it drives me and then it exhausts me at the same time, but in a good way. So when you look at these 4 questions, what role does intuition play in becoming one's true self? What role does society play in one's ability to live authentically? What role does trusting oneself play in both of the above? And what role does lived experience play in all of the above?
I'm laughing, Lisa. This could have been the only slide.
But if we didn't go where we went, I don't know if people would have had those aha moments, right? Or been willing to share their story, which I'm sure resonated with others here, not just me.
Yeah. Does anyone want to address this and answer some of these questions? Larry?
Try. In my earlier career, and we talk about the effective time as we mature. My first job was in corporate, and I was struggling to try to work and develop a corporate identity. And this is where, Lisa, you and I probably went through the same journey. I found that it was so inauthentic, that it was so not me, that I was trying to pretend I was this corporate identity, and that it took me 10 years to get away from that and figure out that no, I needed to escape. And then another 10 years to develop my own company to find the real me. It was a long journey and a hard journey. I'm not sure if this is everybody's journey, but certainly, Lisa, you and I made the journey. I wish that I was as young as you when I made that decision.
I'm 52, so I'm not sure I'm as young as you think.
Oh, well, okay. You look like a baby. So maybe
Thank you.
maybe we were around the same timetable. So I find that that is one of the biggest struggles that we all face in business is who are we, and are we doing our authentic self every day? Very difficult. If you can find a career where you're authentic and you love what you do every day, then that's the secret. And I think all of us are struggling to find that secret.
So tears in my eyes as you're talking. I was like, okay, I'm a very emotional person. That was the other thing I was always told. Don't be so emotional, right? You can't cry. Well, why not? I cry when I'm happy, sad, mad. Now I do it. I just cry if I feel like it. But Larry, what you are describing, yeah, I mean, I met Jonathan, I think I'm still moving through burnout, but I was pretty early on in my burnout, my deepest burnout phase when I met Jonathan, and connecting with him and recognizing that he was one of my people and could really just understand and be appreciative of my perspectives was a big deal. And I'm still kind of, trying to figure that out. And, but the anxiety and so many things, lost my identity, lost my sense of self through trying to be something I wasn't. One thing that you also said that really struck for me is seeking a career where you can be authentic. And you're right. And it's a career versus a job. And when I do career transformation work with people that are looking to pivot careers, I do something called the art of relationship building, which ties into a lot of what we're talking about here. It's about connections and collaboration and the intersection of mindfulness and networking. And when you're looking for that career, you're figuring out, who are my people? What's the environment? What does that look like? Can I be my authentic self? Can I show up as me and create the impact I wish to see? And I want others to be around me that can see that too. When you're looking for just a job, you may end up right back where you left and you were running from. And so, you have to escape something, but you can fall right back into that trap, which I did 3 times before I recognized that I needed to really do some inward soul searching and find that North Star, which became courage for me.
Yeah. So, anyone, any other comments from other people before I chime in again? I kind of think that it's like the second one, what role does society play in one's ability to live authentically? Or intuition. I think we are trained and programmed through just society and traditional parenting that intuition and authenticity are not important. There are rules in life, and we were told if you do this, it's good, and if you do this, it's bad, and that's who you should be. And we're trained more to fit in than to stand out.
Mhm.
So I think intuition, what role does intuition play? Everything. What role does society play? Gets in the way. Trusting yourself, everything.
And parenting, you mentioned parenting too. Parenting can either get in the way or it can empower your children. And I am probably most proud of how I do enable sometimes. So I'm sure I get in the way of letting my kids fail and, and then get back up. But the one thing I believe that I've done really well, because I hear it from a lot of parents that I work with that are professionals, some are parents in the school, kids in the school system, other times they're in organizations, is that my kids are truly their authentic selves. And I encourage them every day to use their voice to advocate for themselves and to be who they are so that they can become who they've always been meant to be. And my therapist loves to remind me, it's because you're giving them what you needed as a child. And you're now allowing yourself to give the things that you really needed to receive in order to be where I am today at 20, 25, and 30, instead of at 45, 50, and 52.
Thank
So whether
you.
you're a parent or not, you still can think about the changes that you can make with and around others.
Thank you, Lisa. So it's 1 minute after 1, and we said this workshop would go to 1. Lisa had said to me that if anyone wants to hang out for another 10 minutes or so and just kind of go off mute, and she can stop sharing her screen, we can ask any questions or get into any conversation, come to any conclusions that we want. And if you need to log off, then thank you so much for being here, everyone. This was exactly the conversation that I thought we would have. And I'm so grateful that Lisa was here to lead us in this. Thank you. Dwayne.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. But Johnny, then I have to hop off, but we have to exchange information here and continue it. But I've continued to invite me to these seminars and podcasts and so forth. I'm very interested in all of it. Good seeing you, buddy.
Really nice seeing you, Dwayne.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Yes.
Thank you.
Lisa, I just had one last comment for you. I always ask myself, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I still keep asking that to myself every day. And I think that's a big help. I think you've been asking yourself all the right questions. And so keep on asking that question every day. And I think you'll enjoy the person that answers.
Thank you so much. And I'd love to connect
you.
with you. I think there's a lot that we could talk about, everyone that was on today, but definitely, Larry, I'd love to connect and talk further about our respective journeys.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, I am going to stop the recording.